Welcome to Creativity Combustion, where we explore the topic of creativity, meet with interesting people, and I will release a passion project every episode. And I'm your host, Rich Marks the Spot, the creativity scientist. And this is Creativity Combustion, combusting creativity daily.
Hey, Rich.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How you doing?
Pretty good, man. Just made some famous Italian meatloaf with some potatoes, parsnips, and carrots.
Nice, man. So what makes the meatloaf famous?
I saw it on TikTok, like Nonna Pia. She's like a Italian grandma, and she does these like 1-minute recipes with her grandson or something, and she's got like millions of hits.
Nice. Nonna Pia?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, so Cassie's like, what should we have for dinner? And I listed like a million things. And finally I was like, how about meatloaf? And she's like, well, I don't like meatloaf, but okay. And it's like, if you like meatloaf, don't try to act like you're not going to like meatloaf.
Yeah. So it begs the question, does Nonna's recipe have ketchup on the top of the meatloaf?
No, she keeps it basic, like Italian bread, scoop the inside out, 2 eggs, Parmesan cheese, salt and pepper, and a little water, olive oil, a little butter on top.
That's pretty straightforward, man. And then what do you use for the actual meat?
She uses like a pork and blend with. I just used Hamburg 80/20.
Okay, there you go. Nice.
Couple white onions on the side and a bunch of peeled potatoes, and then I got the parsnips and carrots roasting.
Nice, man. So do you do the lion's share of the cooking, or do you guys kind of like switch off?
We switch off.
Okay.
I mean,
nice.
I have more of a passion for cooking than she does.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, it's enjoyable. For her, she likes to do it, but we're always on a time crunch.
No, I bet with 2 kids.
So, I'm a bit older. I'm more experienced in the kitchen, so I can whip up stuff quick.
Right.
She's more like likes to plan out a recipe and get like almost too involved. I'm like, I can keep it simple and boom, there's dinner in 30 minutes.
Yeah. And then do you make other food for the kiddos?
Yeah, Miles is very picky. He's getting better, but sometimes we do because he won't eat what we're eating.
Okay. So he's got his own little sub-menu going on.
Yeah, what about you?
Hold on 1 second. Hey, Gabe, I'm on the phone, bud. What do you need? What's that, bud? Uh-huh. Yep, your board's in the trunk of my car. You can have one more snack, yeah. You're going to need the keys to get into the back of the truck, though, okay? They should be downstairs by the light, bud. Took Gabe's 8. Okay, well, to go back to what you said, I totally understand about picky. It's kind of the reverse. Gabe ate fucking everything up until, I don't know, maybe like, I want to say like 4.5, 5, and then he got super picky. And it was like, before it was like broccoli, peas, everything. I'm like, this is great. And then that went out the window, and now it's like noodles with butter, maybe a little bit of chicken, barely anything green. It's like, at least we got all of it. What's that?
Those damn Monopoly conglomerates, YouTube throwing ads at kids.
Oh my god, totally, man. It was just like from super healthy to like, and like he'll only have Kraft macaroni and cheese, he won't have Annie's and stuff, and it's kind of like, come on, man, you got to get something green in your system.
Imagine a hacker network managed to like steal every ad that was live on YouTube for a year, and it was just they like copy and pasted broccoli and celery on like Pepsi Cola cans.
Yeah, there would be like a run on that sort of stuff. Or yeah, that's true. And or if there was this one gamer or like the Unspeakable dude or whatever that just was like, I love broccoli, man, it would be such a fucking game changer.
Yeah, I would probably eat more of it too.
Oh my god, yeah, for sure. So, so today, I took Gabe to the Habitat for Humanity store down off Lincoln, kind of by Lincoln Plaza.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
And yeah, so we hadn't been there for a while, so we did like a quick little drop in, and scored him this totally cool thing called a Morph board, MORF. and it's basically like a scooter meets a skateboard, and it's got the deck's maybe like the size of a little bit bigger than a regular skateboard, hard plastic. But then it's got the post handle like a scooter that's solid, that doesn't bend. Two front wheels, one back wheel, and a brake built into the back. And he's tried the skateboard a little bit and never really got the hang of it, and still trying to ride his bike. But when we found, well, I'll look for you. But when we got that, like in the store, he was just taking off on it and loved it. And then we went up to Burncoat Elementary School onto the basketball court, and he just totally rocked it out. And the funny part about it is he comes up to me, he's like, "Dad, I got to tell you something." And I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What is it?" He goes, "I like this better than video games."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yes."
That's so 80s of him.
Yeah. Oh no! And the funny part about that was too is like before we went to Goodwill, and he scored this yellow what's it called, like, is it translucent or whatever? Like when the sun hits it, it makes it kind of change like a rainbow color. Like
a prism.
Yeah, kind of like a prism. Like it's a solid yellow kind of shiny hat, but when the sun hits it, it changes its colors. So I don't know if it's like translucent or what the right word for it is. But then he scored like these kind of gold yellow sunglasses. So I'm like, "You look like Elton John." He's like, "Who's Elton John?" I'm like, I'll show you a picture when we get home."
He had a song with Eminem, and then he's like, "Who's Eminem?"
Yeah. Seriously. So he's rocking his hat on backwards, and he's skating around on the basketball court. So it was nice. So it was like for like 2 hours, man. He's like,
Awesome.
he goes, how long we been up there for? I'm like, "Oh, a little while." And then he's like, "Let me see the clock." He's like, 2 hours, man. He goes, "That was awesome." I'm like, "It was awesome, man. Such a nice day."
Yeah. So, like, try to keep this to 20 minutes since you're busy. I don't want to keep you either. But
Yeah, no worries.
I know me and you could talk for probably 3-4 hours. But I really do appreciate you being the first person interviewed on Creativity Combustion. Like, I'm psyched.
Nice. Well, my pleasure. I'm so glad you asked me, man.
Yeah. So I already know a bunch about you, but really, maybe I don't know as much. So I'll just get into it. And where did you grow up?
Cool. So I'm born and raised in good old Worcester. I grew up on Purchase Street, which is in the Greendale neighborhood, so like North Worcester. 75 Purchase Street to be specific. And yeah, I'm one of 4 kids. I have an older brother, myself, younger sister, younger brother, and went to Greendale Elementary School on Van Haven Road. And kind of a funny story with that. So my older brother was in kindergarten, and my mom is the oldest of 7, and every single one of, including her and siblings, went to Greendale Elementary School. So when my older brother was in kindergarten, my mom's youngest brother was in 6th grade. And then I went, my sister and my brother went, so there was like a 37-year span of Preston Trottas. And my younger brother, who was a bit of a knucklehead, when he left, I think they were the door hit him on the ass on the way out. But it was a trip because I had the same 2nd grade teacher that my aunt had. And she's like, I don't know, she's like almost 17 years older than me. And then my son Gabriel went to Head Start there for a couple years. So it was a super trip being back in that school after all those years, back in some of the same classrooms. His Head Start class was my 2nd grade classroom. So it was just like, you fucking kidding me, man?
I have a similar situation. St. Mary's of Worcester. I grew up on Vernon Hill.
Okay.
My brother had the same 3rd grade teacher, Miss Orzik, and he was a knucklehead. He's 10 years older than me. He had to wash the ceiling or something in the corner of the room because he got in trouble. And he wrote his name in the dust or in oil because he had oil or soot on his fingers.
Yeah.
And when I had the classroom, same teacher, he told me to look in the corner and his name was still there.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And my sister had him and my younger sister had her. I mean, So that's kind of like the same situation, and everyone, oh, are you like Mike, or are you like Rich, or are you like Julie, or are you like Ashley? Like the teacher would ask that every year when they got a new Marcheski in.
That's funny, man. I mean, so your brother's is imprinted into St. Mary's forever.
Yeah, and they looked at me like, oh God.
Yeah, that's funny. They're like, what do we got here, man? It's gonna be a roll of dice.
All right, college. What about college? San Fran?
Well, yeah. Back up just a touch. So went to Greendale, and then my parents divorced. So my mom and I moved out to Southern California, where I went to junior high school. So that was in Dana Point in Laguna Niguel, which is, I don't know, like an hour and a half south of LA, but an hour and change north of San Diego. And so, I went from Worcester to Southern California, and it was a total shift, man. It was like, from going to the hayfield off of Quinnapoxet, burning fires and doing crazy shit, to flash forward now I'm in, the mecca of surf and skateboarding. And so I had to make that transition, which was hard but cool. And so I really get acclimated to that whole lifestyle and took up skateboarding. My first skateboard was a Christian Hosoi hammerhead skateboard, which I didn't know anything of, but it was super cool. And I hung out with this kid named Trevor Hoffman, who I'm pretty sure became like a pro skater, and would be in his garage smoking Newport menthols, fucking around with skateboards, and they would build half pipes and like really into it. And I was kind of like the outsider kid who kind of worked his way in. Used to surf every day. We'd take the bus to the beach, and after school was like the routine, and had to be home when the sun went down. And so I did that for junior high school, and then my mom moved back, so I moved back and ended up going to Burncoat High School, right back in the Burncoat neighborhood. So now I come back as a freshman, and it was like all my friends from 6th grade went to junior high school, and they blended in with all the other kids who came from around the city or the different elementary schools. And now I'm like the new kid back home again, and so I got to like reacclimate. And I came back, and I was kind of bleached blonde out and tanned up, and I was like, the surfer dude, So that was a little bit of a challenge, kind of to get back into the flow. And so I did that, and ended up being, captain of the freshman basketball team. And my older brother at this time was a senior, and I was a freshman. And so I like became friends with a lot of his friends. And the way it kind of worked out was, with my parents being split, my mom was a lot more liberal and loose than my dad, who's a cop. So like we would go to these keg parties, house parties, at my brother's friend's house. And at 11, he would have to leave, and I'd still be there, like, see you later, have a good night,
Yeah.
and then spend the rest of the night, partying with those guys. Until one night in particular, my brother had to go home, and I think he probably had enough of me telling him, see you later. So then flash forward to like an hour or two later, and my dad shows up, the cop, with my mom, and they come rifling through the house looking for me. And the only place I could hide was in the bathtub. No water, but I'm in the bathtub. So they come to get me, and I squirrel out of it. And now I have my dad and my mom, mostly my dad, chasing me. I had a scooter at the time, which I wasn't able to turn on, so I had to book it home. And then when I got home, I knew my mom was going to be waiting for me, so I spent the night in the bushes. She took all my clothes and threw it on the front lawn and shit. And she's like, "You're out of here." I did make it back into the house eventually, and that was kind of been like a long-standing joke amongst my older brother and my parents of like, you little son of a bitch, you're in the bathtub and running away from us. And, my brother's back at home probably like, my goddamn younger brother's still out, and all that sort of stuff. So I did Burncoat, ended up, into sports. I was soccer team captain my junior and senior year. Never had a junior captain before. That was kind of a big thing. And then I was on the basketball team, which we ended up going to the state championship game. And actually, we still are the best inter high city basketball team ever in the city's history. We're the only team that went undefeated, and went on to play the state championship game. We lost, but it was cool, but also it was kind of funky because every year they'd rotate. They'd go to the old Boston Garden, Springfield Civic Center, and then the Worcester Centrum. And this was in 90, and they closed the original Boston Garden in like 91, and they had played the high school championship like the year before. So on the rotation, it would have never gone back to the Garden, which we were all hoping for. It ended up being a home game for us because it was at the Centrum. So we're talking somewhere from 11 to 15,000 people watching us. And it was a great experience, besides the fact that we got our asses kicked pretty well. And so that was cool. And I was a senior class president, dated a pretty gal, was a junior, and did the whole thing. And then a week after, actually, here's a kind of a funny story. So I become senior class president, right? And once again, my mom was pretty loosey-goosey, had all these absences, all these tardies and stuff. So the principal, Mr. O'Malley, calls me in at the end of the junior year. He's like, listen, you got to be the president, but you got to, ship up or shape out, with your attendance and stuff. I'm like, no problem. So the school year starts, same shit, late all the time. And he pulls me into the office. He's like, Mr. Trotta. He goes, this is the deal. He's like, every class president from the 4 inner highs will go to the city council meeting to represent the school, and they'll be televised. We've decided that we're going to have your vice president represent the school, and you're not going to do it. And I was like, all right, no big deal. I'm cool with that. So this guy, Mr. O'Malley, didn't really like me too much. So now flash forward to graduate, give the speech at the old Worcester Auditorium in front of a couple thousand people, kind of wung it. And then 2 days later, I'm on a plane at Worcester Airport to fly back out to California, where I was about to start junior high school. I'm walking on the plane. I've got, at that time, my Walkman cassette on. I'm listening to Led Zeppelin, Going to California, get myself pumped up. Who's sitting on the airplane but Mr. O'Malley? I walk by. I'm like, how's it going, Mr. O'Malley? He's like, Scott Trotta. I didn't think only Mr., but he's like Trotta. And then so I'm sitting like 5 seats back from him. And, then flash forward, we land in L.A., get off the plane, we're at the luggage, my aunt's there with a big sign, welcome to California, and I'm like, see you later, Mr. O'Malley, and he's probably like, that son of a bitch. So that was a pretty auspicious start to junior high school out in the West Coast.
Wow, so I, didn't really picture you as someone who was so involved in sports and so talented at sports, because, every conversation we talked about, it was always like involving film, creativity, making like a project or, stories, talking about past jobs and stuff. So did you have like a creative outlet as well as the athletics when you were younger?
I did, yeah. In high school, I've always been interested in the arts. I always liked to draw. I was actually, I think, a really good plus drawer back in grammar school. I was part of this thing called the Peak program, and I went to the art museum and made pinhole cameras and worked with clay and drawing. So I always liked that. That was a through line for me for sure. And even back in high school, I found myself gravitating towards, maybe not such mainstream films. There was, an art house movie theater in the city. I had to go to some art house films, and always kind of had that part of me that was just kind of starting to take all that sort of stuff in. When I get out to the West Coast, my first year out there, I was offered to study abroad, which was in Florence, Italy, which I did when I was 19. And now I'm over there and, totally engulfed with the beauty and the history of Florence, Renaissance, Italy. And that just really spurred me to really get into that more. I took an Italian film history class, and, Fellini's, La Dolce Vita and Rossellini's Rome Open City. It's like all these new things really were like, wow, this shit is really cool. And so that really got me going in junior high school and junior college. And then I had to make a decision for when I transferred, where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And at that point, I was really getting into film, videography at the time with like the high 8 cassettes, and decided to apply for film school and got into San Francisco State. Sight unseen, I applied to a couple other schools, but I was like, I get in, San Francisco sounds great, I'm going to go there for sure. And then I got there, and they had a really good film program, both graduate and undergraduate. The graduate film program was kind of heavily driven by feminist lesbian films, because San Francisco's a pretty open, diverse town, and open to the a lot of the gay community. So that just happened to be the emphasis. So I worked on many graduate student films, with the genre of just kind of feminism and lesbian lifestyle. So that was a great eye-opening thing, and I was cool with it and learned a lot from the filmmakers, mostly ladies, and the film school itself was cool. The dean at the time was this guy, August Coppola, who's Francis Ford Coppola's brother, Nick Cage's dad. And so he was a very famous composer. So a lot of his fingers were in the film department. And so I got there. It was great, man. There's another guy named Larry Clark, a black filmmaker who did a lot of really cool films in the 70s. He was one of the cameramen on Richard Pryor's Live on the Sunset Strip. And so I was exposed to a lot of really diverse film school experience, and that was back when it was like you shot on real film, Super 8, 16 millimeter, upright movie old as you're cutting film with fucking razor blades and gluing them together. I mean, like old school analog type stuff, which was cool, but it was right on the cusp of when like nonlinear Avid editing systems were coming in. So it was like I was learning kind of old school, which then became obsolete, which then became kind of hip, but I kind of like got lost in that transition, but did the film school thing. Lived in the city, which was great, lived that really awesome kind of European style lifestyle after coming from living in Europe on my own a bunch of times, and loved San Francisco, but Europe was great too. I backpacked through by myself. Met a lot of people, did some crazy shit. Running with the bulls in Pamplona, sneaking into the Vatican Museum in Rome. This one kid that I hung out with from San Francisco, we went to a Dali exhibit in Florence, and he stole a piece of artwork. And we're running through the city with his little bronze statue and stuff, and it was great, man. It was definitely a great experience that carried over to kind of really kind of open-minded, sort of risky lifestyle in San Francisco as far as, not really giving a fuck, and just, if there was an open door, crack it open more and see where it would lead and stuff. So, I'm really grateful for my experience in junior college and in undergraduate college, coming from Burncoat Street, which had its own experience, to the next thing you know, I'm, in North Beach hanging out in the same bars that Kerouac did and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and inspired by the Beats and all that sort of stuff, which I would have probably never been exposed to if I didn't get the heck out of Worcester. So I'm super grateful for that, and that was college, and I get into film and television in San Francisco, which led me to Los Angeles. Worked a lot in LA. I was in a bunch of films, worked on a bunch of films. Music videos were huge at the time. And then I get into reality TV, which is also really big. So kind of got my fingers in a lot of different things. But never really like specialized, didn't really get too high up the ladder, but, working a whole different bunch of genres. But I needed to feed myself, pay the rent. So it was like I was kind of stuck at a little bit of a lower level. But I loved it, being single, being in LA, working on rap music videos in East LA to, a couple gay films in West Hollywood to, reality TV shows and high-rise hotels. It was cool, man. It was a really great experience that I'm so glad that I had. And once again, coming from Worcester to, see the world in Europe, and then San Francisco, Los Angeles was great, man. So really look back fondly to my college, my 20s and 30s for sure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's like, imagine if you had Instagram back then.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't have that back then. It was regular phones, and then beepers came out, and it was a whole different way to communicate with people. Postcards. When I met people in Europe, when I came back to San Francisco, you'd send them a postcard. Maybe if you had enough money, you'd call them on the phone. But it was like this, in comparison, a delayed communication system, but it worked. It's like when I traveled, I had a 35 millimeter camera and shot real film. You know what I mean? And at the time, bought a high 8 video camera, which was like the coolest thing ever. And trying to get the right sort of adapters to plug into European plugs. With shit stuff like that. And now it's like.
You could order
Google,
that on Amazon before you go, but back then you got to go to a specialty store and get the hookup.
Oh, for sure. Make sure you have enough batteries and the right battery charger, and so it's like. But part of that also too, I think, helped with the hustle. It was like that was the way it was, but you had to figure out how to do it that way. It was like we would take the Eurail trains, and we had a ticket that you'd hand write the dates on, right? So we would travel on the 4th, so we could change it to the 8th or the 9th, so we could squeeze out more days. And, now it's all electronic. So it's like, the ability to buck the system for that specific thing probably isn't possible anymore, but then again, maybe you could take a screenshot of a ticket of a concert and talk your way into getting in because here's my ticket, it's on my phone, take a quick look sort of thing. So,
we could Photoshop anything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had one experience. I was at the Cannes Film Festival and I met this reporter who had a ticket to go to the Miramax party. Miramax was there with From Dusk Till Dawn, Usual Suspects. So, we photocopied the ticket, folded it up a few times, and I was able to sneak in, get into the VIP room. In the VIP room, I was fortunate enough to hang out and drink beer with Harvey Keitel and meet Marissa Tomei. But I'll finish with this one story. So here I am, I'm like early 20s, got myself in a tuxedo I borrowed from a friend. I'm wearing my Chuck Taylor, Converse sneakers. And so we're in there and I'm heading to the bathroom and I see this like stunning blonde, right? Kind of catch eyes, both go to the restroom, come on at the same time. Hey, how's it going? Da-da-da. You want to dance? Yeah, let's dance. Now we're on the dance floor. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Everything's going great. And then we kind of, this whole circle of people kind of come up and start dancing around us. This girl all of a sudden, like, just peels off of me like I'm chopped liver, and she's dancing with this guy, right? And I'm going, what the fuck? I'm looking at this guy, kind of heavy set, not really, I don't think a good looking dude, but she's just like enthralled with this guy. So now I come over, and I like try to like get back into it with this girl. So now I'm talking to her a little bit. He's talking to me. There's a few other people. And all of a sudden, this conversation starts getting a little weird, good but weird, and the topic becomes edible underwear, right? So it's like, edible underwear, have you tried it? I asked the blonde, she's like, no. And then the guy goes, have you tried it? I go, no, but I'd like to. I'm like, have you tried it? He's like, no, I haven't tried it yet. So now this is like, a few drinks in, okay, this is great. Once again, this gal doesn't want to dance with me. So I was like, all right, I go back to my table, some of my friends are there, and they're like, do you know who you were just dancing with? I'm like, I don't know. I thought things were going good with this blonde, and now she's talking to this guy, and I don't know what's going on, man. It's like, what's the deal? They're like, well, do you know who you're dancing with? I'm like, yeah, the guy that she's more interested in than me. And they're like, no, that's Harvey Weinstein, and this is his party because he owns Miramax. And I'm like, well, God bless him, but he just basically cock blocked me. And we're talking about edible underwear, right? And then, flash forward to all these years later, who would have known that he was the creep that he was, and he was pulling some crazy shit even back then.
It all makes sense now.
It all makes sense. So, I could say that I amongst other things, shared a beer with Harvey Keitel and danced with Harvey Weinstein talking about edible underwear, and basically got cock blocked by him. So, one of many crazy travel experiences, which was great. So that's my Harvey Weinstein story.
Amazing. What's the perfect cup of coffee for you?
Perfect cup of coffee. I would say I have memories of a perfect cup of coffee. Italy for sure. Florence, very, very famous cafe. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a famous black and white photograph called An American Girl in Italy. And she's coming off of the curb, and she's kind of clutching herself, and you can see in her face that she's just like, basically like, oh my God, I've got to get out of here. She's engulfed by all these Italians. This is like 1945 black and white right after World War II. Vespa, dressed up Italians, old guys, young guys, and you can see that they're catcalling this lady, right? Gunnar took the picture, but it's very famous and beautiful, but they're standing in front of this cafe, the most famous coffee shop in Italy, which has been around forever, and that's where I've had the best espresso of my life. And you go in, and the baristas are dressed in suits, and it's super formal and ornate. And you go up there and you order your espresso, and you wait for them to do the whole razzle dazzle. They give it to you, and I was told that if it's a really good espresso, right, you take the little demitasse spoon and you swirl it like 2 or 3 times, and then you take the corner of the demitasse spoon onto the ceramic espresso cup, and you hit it once, and a drip of the coffee comes off. You hit it the second time, a second drip of the coffee comes off, and you hit it the third time, and all the coffee, the spume or the foam layer should come all off on those 3 hits. And if they don't, that means they didn't put the right amount of coffee into the machine or press it long enough.
Mm.
And every time I've done it, it seemed to be right on. But it was just like the sense memory of the smell, of the taste, and the whole experience was the best coffee that I remember ever having, for sure. Nowadays, though, the best coffee is I really like to find a really good French press, really good grounds that I like a certain flavor. I like things a little bitter, a little smoky, and then just trying to find that perfect water to ground ratio. It take a good amount of time to plunge it and stuff, and let it steep long enough, and then just rock it out, man. I like sugar in the raw. I like it in the ceramic, and I like just to take my time with it, man.
So
and,
any milk or cream, or just black with a bit of sugar?
No, I like whole milk. I like a little bit of whole milk just to kind of cut that edge a little bit. Put a little sugar in the,
Yes.
It just cuts it a touch, but you still kind of get that bite, and doesn't kill the aroma. And then I like the sugar in the raw. I like it to dissolve, and that's that will make me a happy camper, man. That's a good Saturday, Sunday morning. Take my time and just maybe get into a newspaper, rock some music. That's my ideal these days.
Nice. And I asked that because I created a post about my top 3 favorite coffees, and it kind of like giving a little elbow jab to the people who are getting these fancy sugary coffees.
Okay.
And that made me discover my next post, which is about does coffee fuel creativity? And like doing a bit of research about it, it actually isn't good for creativity because it's actually better for having a project already in place, because you get focused on those tasks and you actually can help complete the project quicker. If you're sitting down to have coffee and be creative, it's actually hindering because you want to be focused on something that's already in place.
Oh, I see. Okay. I can see
and
that.
I'm not explaining it great, but, I wrote the post and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've been on this, like, coffee kick and, like, doing research on coffee and creativity. So that's why I asked you that question.
Definitely, man. I mean, I think it absolutely does foster or spark creativity, but I can also see it from that lens where if, like, something is rocking and rolling, or if there's, like, like if I've written something, right, and then get into, like, the editing process, fueled by coffee, I think that's when I can really get cranking, as opposed to maybe, like, having that coffee and sitting down like, okay, I want to come up with something. Where is there something there? It's kind of like if it more organically comes to me in a dream or somewhere else, I can start the process. But maybe if it stalls out, a good French press or espresso, man, could definitely get me going for sure. You know what I mean? I can definitely see it from that lens.
That was the science of it, but I actually debated. I say, me personally, I can make my mind go blank, make a coffee, plan to be blank, make a coffee and see what happens. So, like, it does help me creatively.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the beauty of individual creativity and choice, and really what works for you. You know what I mean? If you find that's your elixir, your mix of creativity, coffee, and maybe a space that also fosters that, could be wherever in your house or a coffee shop and stuff. I think all those elements definitely can come together for sure, man. Awesome. The beauty of it is you can always try different stuff or go back to the old faithful and ride that wave.
Yeah, like, a good 40-ounce beer, some crack cocaine, and just get in the basement with all the lights off and candles, and then just create, for the next 2 weeks, forget about your job, and hit it that way.
Yeah. You know what that was called for me, Rich?
What?
31 to about 33.
I've always been a water and coffee guy. Like, that is my drug. Like, I don't smoke cigarettes or any of that. It's always been, like, get me a strong cup of coffee, and I almost felt like a wobble to me, like I was doing cocaine or something. Not that I would know what it's like doing that, but...
Sure. Well, I'll finish on this last one thing, too. When I was in Italy, too, zuppa means soup in Italian. And zuppa americano is what the Italians call American coffee. They call it the soup. They basically think there's way too much water to the coffee ratio. So if you ask for, like, basically a drip pour coffee, American style, that's what they call it. So if you want a cup of soup in Italy, that's what you ask for, the American soup, as opposed to the classic espresso or cappuccino, what have you, and stuff.
Americano times 4, meaning what? 2 espresso shots and 4 things of water for me, please?
Yeah, basically. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Cool. Well, much appreciated you taking the time out to talk. You're the first Creativity Combustion interview. I knew it would be amazing.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate it, Rich. If you ever want to revisit, I'd love to continue, or whatever you got going on. I'm open to it, and I definitely want to give you kudos, man. I mean, you're a super creative dude, and I'm really pleased you included me on this, and I can't wait to hear all the other interviews you have. I'm sure there's a lot of really cool folks out there, and I'd like to hear their take on creativity and coffee and beyond, for sure.
Truly doing this for myself because I miss my friends, and like with all the responsibilities of the world, I don't have the time to just go get coffee and do nothing all day. And I want to talk to my friends. I want to talk to people I don't know and catch up and like learn. Like you learn new things about people every time you talk to them. It's like I've known you for probably 10 years now, but I didn't know any of those things that you shared today. So
cool, man. And a lot of them were locked away, and it's great to share for sure. And now I'm in a good groove to kind of be in that memory zone and buzz and stuff. So I appreciate you, and I get a lot more too. So hey, and I want to hear more about you too, man. I mean, you've done a lot of cool stuff. You shared a lot of cool stuff. I think I remember was like that snow igloo video from off of Winfield Street or whatever that one time. And, all that in the Hollywood Avenue movie or Street movie.
Hollywood Street movie.
Yeah, man, I remember that stuff. So yeah, you're
Worcester
a
cult classic.
Yeah. So definitely want to hear more about that shit too.
So with each Creativity Combustion episode, that's part of it. I share a personal story. I make a playlist. I do like a bit of a research project on creativity. I do an interview, and then I release a project. And that first project is Cannibal Cafeteria. It's kind of a weird one. It's really experimental. It's about zombies on Mars who fly to Earth. They flash freeze humans because that's what they eat, and they bring them back, and they do really nice fine dining. They have a beautiful restaurant. They have elegant meals, but they're serving humans.
Nice.
To the other zombies. And the zombies were humans, but when they colonized Mars, it's like this weird disease happened where, unfortunately, the brains got bigger. They grew intelligent, actually, but their hygiene got gross, and they really developed a taste for human flesh. And it's like a new genome, or whatever you want to call it, of humans, but they actually eat humans, and they're actually kind of smarter than us. So it's like really debacle for us humans. We're like, what? Yeah, they're gross and they're weird, but they're like super smart, and they figured out how to get us, and they're like feeding us to the other zombies on Mars, and it's like, we made this happen, so we got to deal with it. But they're smart.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty interesting shit, man. I'd like to check that out for sure, man. It's like I think we talked about that Twilight Zone episode where it's the cookbook episode where they're kind of similar deal with the Martians that come and pull off humans, bring them back, and they've got that book, and it turns out they're able to translate it at the last or too late moment where they're like, holy shit, they're taking us back to eat us. So
you nailed it on the head. I never saw that episode. I never even heard of it. Yeah. And then when I looked it up after you mentioned that, I was like, wow, this is like, I actually forgot. I want to embed that video into the page just so, like, it's such a cool cool episode and writing.
The cool part, yeah, I mean, Rod Sterling, those guys came up with that in like the 50s, so that energy, that idea was out there, you never heard of it before, but it's cool that, you had your own creative take on it, and it's similar content, which speaks to, that creativity has jumped from generations, with the fascination of Mars and the mystery of it, and kind of the fear of humans of like, what the fuck would aliens do? And, here we are in 2022, and that's fresh for you. And that was, groundbreaking back in the 50s, and with no connections except maybe, on your subconscious level, which is a huge part of creativity. And then poses the question of like, is all that creativity and information already out there in the universe of the ether? And it's just a matter of if you can just hook into whatever that kind of, parallel, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, what really, was it purely, your unadulterated original creative idea, or was there sparks of that somewhere out there that got into your subconscious through, maybe your dad was watching that episode when you're, Miles's age, and it stayed with you and then manifested itself all these years later, or you just manifested it all by yourself and it just happens to be super similar content, I mean, that's really interesting shit too.
And I honestly don't know where my ideas come from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, perfect. You nailed it on the head.
Yeah.
All right, well, you enjoy your night.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the meatloaf, enjoy the kids, and reach out whenever. And we should just go get a cup of coffee together in real life, man.
I know, and film it, and we can go meet up with Chucky Strangers. Remember Chuck?
Yeah,
have him, because I'm interviewing him next.
Okay.
He's gonna make me a creativity cocktail, and I'm gonna do like an interview while he's bartending.
Oh, cool.
Try to. I don't know how. Maybe I'll get him mic'd up because I was gonna like have someone film it, which is more interesting and entertaining.
For sure, yeah.
But I also see a lot of value in just talking to people over the phone. So.
Yeah, whatever's clever. And if you ever do it on a weekend that I don't have my kiddo, man, I'd be more than happy to get behind the camera or help out. I dig that sort of stuff too. So just keep me in mind.
And I'll keep you in touch as I build the page to post this on, because I want to like share the picture you talked about. I want to share the, I want to like tell the story that you're telling with a couple videos, pictures,
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe if you could even share some, if you've got some pictures in a frame or something, send them to me.
I can pull out some old stuff for sure. I don't have pictures of me and Harvey, but I get some other stuff.
I can Photoshop that.
Yeah.
Actually, you probably don't want that, so.
Yeah, maybe not so much the Harvey stuff, but I get some. Yeah, let me dig through my old stuff and I'll take a picture. Yeah, cool. All right, Rich, man.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right, see ya.